Could we know the identity of Gerson's love interest? Could the Undertale Anniversary content be teasing anything for Deltarune? And could the knight have a secret weakness that we've known all along? Well, it appears it's that time yet again. Theories have been sent in from all the good boys and girls across the world, and now it's my time to review them all. Wait a minute, Spookydood, weren't you done with Deltarune? No! I said I was taking a break from making Deltarune theory videos and from being a Deltarune-focused channel. Last week I released an amazing digital circus theory, an amazing digital circus theory if I say so myself. Go check that out, super fun. And with my inbox as full as it is, I'm going to be doing more theory reviews to try and catch up with all the theories you guys sent me. So with that being said, my name is Spookydood, make sure to like and subscribe, now let's discuss. The first one's from Trey. In the super cool surprise Undertale Anniversary Livestream with all those extra segments in Cartman Land, all those cool extended underground segments, we got extra lore from Gerson about the human and monster war. Apparently, the sides weren't so different. There were humans fighting with the monsters. Gerson even says some of his best war buddies were humans. Not only that, but business partners, friendships, and even married couples were separated, meaning that there were some marriages between humans and monsters. Gerson says he even knew someone doing the sealing, and that he saw them for the last time in that beautiful magician's outfit. There has been much discussion about what exactly this means, with the fandom's general conclusion being that Gerson was in love with a human. Trey's theory suggests that Gaster is actually a human, or the skeletons are somehow former humans. Maybe he's even the magician that Gerson spoke about. Trey suggests that in Deltarune, the monsters won the war instead of the humans, and Gaster's goal is to rewrite history so humans won the Great War instead. In doing this, they will end up creating the Undertale universe as a sort of parallel loop type thing. This is because Gaster is at least part human, as, the Undertale Anniversary content implied could happen. I'm going to say I actually like parts of this idea a lot. The idea that Gaster was the magician Gerson was referencing, though, that seems like too much of a stretch. I think the odds that Gerson just so happened to be referring to Gaster in that dialogue are very low, but the idea that Gaster is at least partially human, and that the skeletons are partially human as well, has definitely been opened up now that we know that humans were married to monsters. There isn't enough evidence yet. We don't know what Gaster's abilities are, nor do we know what a theoretical human-monster hybrid would be like, so there's no real way to compare and contrast yet. Similarly, we have no real way to know whether or not this is a world where monsters won the Great War like you suggested. I think this is an interesting idea from a storytelling standpoint, because I like the idea that Toby Fox wrote this story and decided to analyze it from both angles, but I wouldn't say that's a guarantee. Also, locking humans underground seems like a death sentence as opposed to monsters who can live much longer and don't need the same things that humans do. Humans, as we know, do not have magic. It's an interesting idea, and I think that most people will write it off foolishly. We were just told that monsterkind never hated humanity, and that sealing them away took away the humans' magic. We know that in Deltarune there are very few humans, but they are still accepted in society, and monsters have no magic. So perhaps it is a sort of parallel thing. Either way, because it's too theoretical at the moment, I'm going to have to give this one a 6 out of 10. I also think, before I move on, that it does sort of rely a little too much on Undertale's story to work. Theory 2 is from Ada. Susie is a descendant of the purple human in Undertale. Evidence? She's purple. Also in Undertale, the description for perseverance says, purple. Even when you felt trapped, you took notes and achieved the end of ball. Gerson talks about perseverance to Susie and says, perseverance. Each time you get a little better. I don't think this theory is correct in its most literal form. I doubt Susie is the descendant of the Purple Soul from Undertale. I'm going to have to give this theory a 4 out of 10 for that reason. However, I do think that Susie and the concept of perseverance could be linked. Especially because Deltarune implies that we're going to feel trapped, forced to face a bad ending, but Susie might have the power of hope to break through that ending, thus aligning her with what we know about perseverance. Theory 3, this one's from Michael. December wasn't the one to write the code on the inside of the guitar. First, there's not enough evidence to fully prove that Des was familiar enough with the shelter to have written down the code. Second, if she wrote the code inside the guitar and Carol knew about it, and didn't want anyone accessing it, why did she just leave it sitting there? Instead, it makes more sense for Carol to have written down the code in a place she knew nobody would go looking for it. This is significant because it creates an avenue in which nothing related to Carol, Chris, Asgore, Des, etc. happened in the shelter prior to Des's disappearance. This is really interesting and arguably makes a bit more sense than if Des was the one to write the code. You're right, if Carol didn't want anyone seeing it, why would she just leave the guitar sitting there? It does make more sense for her to write the code down inside of it. That being said, this does raise another question. Why would Carol even write the code down to begin with? It's 12/25, aka Christmas, aka December holiday. I don't know why Carol would need to have it written down at all. I'm sure she'd remember that. Not only that, but another question. How did Carol know that Susie was going to find the guitar? Okay, we're getting off track here, but I actually think your general idea here could be correct. Like, I'm not even going to say it seems that it could be correct. Based on what we know, I actually think it's more likely than the suggestion that Des wrote it herself. I'm giving this theory an 8 out of 10. This next theory is a simple one from PK Fennec. The act of driving your blade into the earth and literally creating a new world is supposed to be a metaphor for putting pen to paper and metaphorically creating a new world. Yeah, I agree with this 100%. I'm going to give this theory a 10 out of 10. That's definitely the intention, especially considering the Dark World has elements of the creator's subconscious ingrained within itself. Gerson's dialogue about writing and stories in Chapter 4 also seems to help confirm this for sure. Like I said, 10 out of 10. Theory number 5 is from Angry Hal 123. Okay, this one led me down a whole bunch of thinking rabbit holes, and I'm still confused. Angry Hal suggested initially that the person Chris is speaking with on the phone is Carol in Chapter 4's Holiday House segment. Well then, if that's the case, why can we hear Carol clearly over the phone at the end of the Weird Route? Wouldn't that suggest that it's a different speaker? Well, no. As Angry Hal says, the core of the theory here, the reason that we couldn't hear the phone clearly but could at the end of the Weird Route, is because the phone is farther away from Chris, so we can't make out everything being said. As in, the reason that sometimes Carol speaks in garbled, spaced-out words is because the phone is away from Chris's head. This actually made a ton of sense. At first. See, comparing the two endings, both the regular and Weird Route endings of Chapter 4, you'll see that the primary difference between the two calls, outside of the obvious fact that one is clearly Carol and one is unknown, is that in the pacifist ending, the phone is far away from Chris when Carol calls, whereas in the Weird Route, Chris holds it right up to their head. Boom, we solved it, right? Especially considering throughout the rest of the chapter this remains accurate. When Chris is making chocolate milk, the phone is on the table. Except in the closet, after Susie snags the guitar, Chris holds the phone right up to their head and Carol is clearly not able to be heard. Okay, so this seems like this theory is false then, just like that. But then I got to thinking, what if Angry Hal is on the right track here? And in reality, the reason we can sometimes hear Carol but sometimes can't is because it's based on whether or not the soul is inside of Chris. If the soul is in them, we can hear Carol, but if it's out, we can't. That's because when we're outside of Chris, we no longer have access to their body or mind, so we can't just hear what they hear anymore, right? Well, no, because in both endings, the soul is outside Chris. So the only other suggestion then is that perhaps that is correct, but the reason we can clearly hear Carol's call in the Weird Route ending is because the soul inside Noelle lets us hear what she hears, so we hear Carol, who is presumably in the same house. Whatever, this is getting stupid. I don't know, I have no idea. I think this theory is generally good though, and if it weren't for that one moment, I would have ranked it much higher, but as it is, I have to give it a 6 out of 10. Theory 6 is from Mr. Mikeface. He says that the Undertale Anniversary Livestream extra content was actually all Deltarune teasers in one way or another. Every segment meant something for Deltarune in the future. Okay, I think that before I even go over this one, I can give it a firm 5 out of 10, as Toby himself explained his reasoning for adding all those areas. But to give you the benefit of the doubt here, I'm going to go through all the content and tell you which, if any, could even be Deltarune teasers. The new Ruins area doesn't mean anything for Deltarune as it's specifically tied to Undertale and monster history. The new Snowden area can't be anything because the tree guy is explicitly tied to the idea of all the new content that was shown. Noel behind the tree? Okay, fair, more of a reference than a teaser, but if anything, I think this is our first actual look at a proper young Noel sprite, so you win with that one, actually. All of the Sans content, no, except for, I guess, him doing the old jitterbug during his pacifist battle. That's admittedly a possible teaser, considering it would imply he learned the dance in Deltarune. Spamton segment. No, I mean, yeah, obviously a reference, but not a teaser for any future content. On that subject, though, what even was that? All the new waterfall content, again, no, it's just related to Undertale. Hotland High. Okay, there's some interesting content here, including references to Ice-E. One NPC in particular is definitely a reference and could be considered a sort of teaser if you really want to count that, but we'll get back to her later. All the ending stuff like the new home area don't really mean anything, and the Gerson dialogue, while it could mean something as we previously discussed, is a bit vague and more of an overall discussion on monster history and storytelling than anything else. So no, I don't necessarily think much of this is meant as a Deltarune teaser, and I'm going to stick with a 5 out of 10 for this one. Theory 7, this one's from Adric W. It's a pretty safe bet at the moment that Asgore is going to play a major role in Chapter 5. Not only that, but many believe he's actually going to be the main boss of the chapter, considering the text on his prophecy panel basically confirming it. In Chapter 2, we saw that Rousey convinced Queen to let us close the Dark Fountain. In Chapter 3, we see Susie do the same with Tenna. What if in Chapter 5, in order to talk Asgore down, Chris rips out the soul so they could talk to Asgore themselves? This would be a natural progression in the brewing tension between us and Chris, not to mention it would be a brilliant subversion of our expectations. Well, I have to say, it's a very interesting idea, and I think it has potential, but it would only work if Asgore was going to do something really drastic. If he absolutely needed someone to step in and speak to him. If the fight against Asgore is something like Queen or Tenna, I don't think it would work for it to be a big dramatic moment, because these fights were a bit more lighthearted. But if it was a serious issue that was about to be caused, like, I don't know, I guess opening another Dark Fountain, then yeah, I agree. Chris ripping out the soul could work. I'm giving this theory a 6 out of 10. It's definitely a solid idea, and not out of the realm of possibility, but we would have to realize that this would most likely reveal to Susie that Chris can't exactly speak freely when the soul is inside of them, which opens up some uncomfortable discussions that would need to take place. Another thing I want to mention, we can't be super certain about pattern-based theories anymore. Chapters 3 and 4 basically destroyed all pattern-based theories like chess theory or theories about how the secret bosses would work, and the game is way less formulaic than we expected. So while I get where you're coming from here, Asgore might not need someone to talk him down at all. For all we know, it could be as simple as the Knight or another character knocking Asgore unconscious. Or alternatively, he's put to sleep. Or our fight with him is stopped by a bigger, more dangerous threat that we have to deal with. There are many, many options, so I wouldn't get too attached to this idea just yet. Another quick one, this time from Kelvy. No cops, no rules. With Undyne gone and Susie desperate to find the shelter codes, she'll probably rip up the police tape in Chapter 5 during or after the festival to look for clues, since there are no cops and Napstablik won't try to stop us, so we won't get in trouble for doing that. I actually think it's also worth mentioning that in Chapter 4, Susie broke past Ralsei's tape that was supposed to keep us from going into his room. It's definitely a possibility, and frankly, a likely one. All things considered, I don't see how else that tape would get taken down. I'm giving this a 9 out of 10. This next one's really cool, and it's from Goober Pipebomb. Basically, we know, as I explained in prior videos, that there is likely to be a song called Synthesis at some point in Deltarune. Many have theorized that it'll be used somewhere in Chapter 5 for a flower-based character or boss as a play on photosynthesis. But what if we can get more specific? We know that each chapter tends to focus mostly on one character at the center of its story, or more so a core idea or emotional issue that a character or characters are facing. So what if Chapter 5 focuses on Ralsei, especially considering how it's a Flower King Dark World, and, you know, Ralsei, flowers, flowy, Asriel, something. Maybe Ralsei will be explored by having him interact with a darkener version of Asriel, brought to life by a photo in Asgore's home. We could learn more about Ralsei's connection to Asriel and the ways they differ from each other. This theory suggests that similar to Now's Your Chance to Be Ya and Big Shot, this character will have two major themes. Photo, their regular theme, and Synthesis, which would play in their boss fight. This is a really cool idea. Here's what I'm going to say. Based purely on the naming convention, I am going to go with 7 out of 10 here. I am specifically ranking the idea that there's going to be a song called Photo and a connected song called Synthesis. I like your overall idea, but I will say it seems like it's a bit of a stretch at the moment, as we really have no way of knowing if those things are going to happen yet. That being said, Toby did once make a reference to how Ralsei's always getting mixed up with flowers. This next one's from Gaster Denier, and it states that the Bluebird teacher NPC we see in Hotland High is in fact Birdley's mother. Yeah, I don't think there's too much to say here. It seems to be 100% correct. Is there any reason why she's not a teacher in Deltarune? I'm not sure. I guess it's never been explicitly confirmed that she's not a teacher. Unless she teaches high school, or am I overthinking it? Overall, yes, I think this is Birdley's mom for sure. 10 out of 10. This next theory is from Jimmy, and it states that the Susie half-human theory, which has been widely, spread in the community for a while, is now most likely correct, since Gerson has opened up the possibility of human-monster marriages in the Undertale world, so it probably exists in the Deltarune world as well, considering the monsters weren't all banished. I think that it's an interesting idea, but I don't necessarily know where it would go. I've seen people take the route of, oh, Susie half-human theory is a way to connect her with Chris in a way, because Chris is a human who always wanted to be a monster. So they're both kind of uncomfortable with their own, existences. And that's an interesting idea, but I don't necessarily think that the story is setting that up just yet. I mean, it's possible, right? Susie does say that she had to move around a lot as a kid, so it could be because, she was half-human, half-monster, and that was sort of I guess an outcast thing in the Deltarune world, but too many questions are raised, and I think that The biggest problem would be that has to now be crammed into the story. Like Susie, if she doesn't get any more exploration with her parents, I don't think that would be the worst thing in the world. I've seen people complain about that and say, oh no, we have to get an explanation. We have to see her parents. But I don't think we do. Like if it just turns out, oh yeah, her parents are either dead or her parents abandoned her because they're bad. Okay, that's a good enough story. We get it already, right? Like we know that they're not in her life, so why would we need to see it? And furthermore, why would we need to get the whole Susie half-human backstory if that is what's going on? Like, if it happens, it would work. I think that he could do it. But I also think that there's the risk of it being bloated, you know what I'm saying? Like, within the next 5, 6, 7, 3 chapters we have to finish the story completely. When are we going to introduce the idea that Susie is half human and then like have a full payoff where it's like, you know what, I'm comfortable with this now, I've gotten over my insecurities with this? That just seems like a lot of work to have over the next 3 chapters. So I'm not so sure about this one. I am going to give this one a 6 out of 10. Sorry for all the 6 out of 10s. It's just, I'm not really sure if Susie half-human theory has any grounds in reality. I don't think there's enough evidence just yet. This final theory is by Zach FRFX. The night is only able to be in total darkness, or rather, the only time it can show itself in the light world is at night. The basic idea of this theory is that the 2 times we see them in the dark world is when it's nighttime in the light world, and the 1 time they move around in the light world is also at night. This would explain why Sham says in Chapter 2, you don't want to be caught when the sun goes down. It's because the night can only emerge in darkness. This is a really interesting idea and does give some extra context to the night's strange behaviors. Overall, I'm going to give this one an 8 out of 10. I think it's pretty likely, actually. I don't necessarily know how it would factor into the story as like a plot point, but it's good nonetheless. Actually, now that I think about it, the festival has that night, right? Maybe the night will show up there. I also think the obvious name of night and night that connects, that links, it's like poetry, it rhymes, so that gets some points from me. Well, that just about does it for yet another theory review. This one wasn't too long as I wanted to release it while I'm still working on lots of other kinds of videos. Hold on, don't go just yet, there's obviously more to talk about, the video's not over. Like I said before, my Amazing Digital Circus video came out last week, and I'm already working on my next video, so look forward to that. I never really spoke about the extra content added in the Undertale livestream though, so I might as well do that now. I don't want to make a full video about it because frankly I don't have that much to say. Obviously, I thought it was awesome. It was like seeing an alternate universe version of Undertale. This might make sense to nobody and make me sound like a total freak, but I've always had this weird, like, intense love towards the idea of something you know, but different. Like, I absolutely love Mario 64 ROM hacks. When I found out that they existed, I was a kid, and I came across a picture of a large map in Mario 64 that I just knew didn't exist. It puzzled me for weeks. What was this strange picture of Mario 64 that I didn't recognize? It seriously was like looking into an alternate dimension. When I eventually figured it out, I was obsessed with playing any ROM hack I could get my hands on, and I still am. It's awesome. It's like playing a game you love all over again for the first time. And that is what the Undertale livestream felt like. That image of the new ruins area or the new underwater area, they made me have that same sense of wonder and excitement. You know, part of me feels like I would play another Toby Fox game if it was like detached from the whole hardcore strict lore stuff and it didn't have to, like, part of Deltarune is that each chapter comes out and everybody says that it's so impressive and it's so surprising and the amount that they managed to do with it is extremely impressive, like the animation in chapter 4 when the last fountain opens. And I think, yes, it's cool, that is cool. But I kind of want a Toby Fox game that doesn't necessarily have to impress anybody. Just another Undertale, like a simple game that could come out in a short amount of time. Because the writing is just so much fun. Like, all of those new areas were just so enjoyable. All of the ideas that were presented in those new areas were so enjoyable. The big elevator with sands, like, just something little like that. It's like, oh, this feels like a whole different game. The dog hole, I'd play a 100-floor dog hole game. I know you guys would too. It's really, really cool, and it just made me want more from that universe. I can't say I'm too fond of these areas not releasing, as, you know, as much as I appreciate and agree with the importance of interpretation and fans telling their own stories, to me, the word of the creator does trump fan interpretations, as the only reason I'm a fan of X or Y game in the first place is partially because it's the version that the creator made. In 2015, anyone else could have made Undertale, but it would have been way different, and chances are it wouldn't have succeeded nearly as much. The creator is an extremely important factor when it comes to determining the soul of a story, and I want to see what Toby thinks is behind all these mysterious new areas, not anyone else. I know that I said this on Twitter and some people kind of went after me like, oh my gosh, we get this awesome content and your first thing is to complain. I'm not complaining. I don't mind that it didn't come out. I'm not saying, he should have released it, it was bad. I don't care. I'm way over that. It's not the biggest deal in the world. I think it's really, really cool that he made it in the first place. And, that's that. That's all there is to it. But he himself said in the live stream that, fans can figure out on their own like what's out there. He said I think he said something along the lines of that it's important for I'll try to include a clip here if I could find it. If I can't, then this is gonna sound stupid, but he said something along the lines of fans. The word of the fans is important, and he doesn't want to put what's out there. He doesn't want to release what's out there because why would he? The fans can imagine what's beyond the underground and all that. But to me, that's just not how it works because to quote Sheldon Cooper, I could come up with my own rules for oral hygiene.
I'm gonna rewatch it before season 3 starts.
Seems to me they canceled that show.
Why don't you make up your own ending?
Yeah, okay, after that I'll make up my own rules of oral hygiene. Yeah.
That's the worst reference I've ever made, maybe. But I think that so many people could come up with their own versions of the story, but that's not what I'd want to see. Like, if somebody else made a fan game of what's behind all those new areas, I personally wouldn't play it. Not because I think that that's a waste of time or because I think it's bad. That's amazing that if somebody could make the fan game, I mean, that requires talent and skill and all that. But I wouldn't personally be interested in seeing what anyone wants, what everyone thinks is beyond the underground, except for Toby Fox. Because I'd sort of I see them as insular, when I used to play Five Nights at Freddy's fan games all the time, the most annoying thing to me, and I know this is going to sound harsh, but it would be when a fan game starts getting deep into the Five Nights at Freddy's lore and trying to answer questions. You don't have the answers. There are answers, and you don't have them. So I don't want to see your answers. I'd rather see the game's answers, and you do your own thing. I'm not complaining about it, right? Again, I think it's cool that anybody would make a fan art or love for the game enough to make their own thing. Undertale Yellow, I view that as its own thing, and a fantastic thing. I love Undertale Yellow. I don't complain about that because it doesn't match up with the lore or anything like that. That's stupid. But I don't think of it as more Undertale. It's its own thing. Any Undertale fan game I play is its own thing, And so I guess I might sound crazy or harsh here. I'm not trying to sound harsh. I'm not saying if you have lore of Undertale or Deltarune or Five Nights at Freddy's in your fan game, it's bad. I'm saying that on a personal level, I try to view each thing as its own thing because there's a different artist behind it. And I'd rather see, I don't want to see I don't know what I'm saying. But I am saying that for me personally, it's important. The artist behind the work is very important. And I think that, Halloween, the movie Halloween, have you ever seen Halloween? It's a very simple horror movie. If I described it to you, you'd say, okay, well, that doesn't sound that crazy. But it's beloved because of all of its little details. And when you watch that movie, nobody but John Carpenter could have made that. And if anybody else did, it was same plot, same characters. I don't know, Rob Zombie, it would have been terrible. And that's how I feel about it with Undertale. I see that and I think, man, as much as I appreciate what you're saying, Toby Fox, and as much as I get it, for me personally, the artist's intention is extremely important. The artist behind it is extremely important. So I really enjoyed it, and I love the live stream, and I don't want to end this video off on a sour note you suck. But yeah, that's my thought process. I like it a lot. I think that the artist behind the work is important. But overall, really great. It was a great live stream. It was super fun. I am really, really excited. I saw the little extra animation that was on the newsletter for the characters, and I forget what their names are. The mics, the 3 mics, what they really are. And that's super fun. I'm looking forward to it. I think it kind of looks like Deltarune Chapter 5 is coming out late 2026. So, we've got some time. We have got some time. Well, thank you again for watching. My name is Spookydood. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.